Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about episode 12 of season 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man called Me Time. This episode, I honestly don't really know what to do with this episode. There's some strong points in it, and then there's some rather serious weak points. Ultimately, it just sort of leaves me feeling like I'll give it slightly above average is basically my read on it at this moment. But anyway, I feel like focusing on the positive of this episode first, so let's get right into that. First of all, of course, the main crux of this episode is Peter wanting some time to himself, and in that grand tradition, one of the first things he does once he has the surveillance from Shield is gone and Aunt May is out of town for a while, he just kind of goes nuts in his house, and we get to see an homage to the classic movie Risky Business, where he's dancing around his house in his underwear and the t-shirt. So, as a fan of movies from the 80s, I definitely did get a big kick out of that. Risky Business is, of course, as I said, a classic. It's essentially the movie that made Tom Cruise a star, before Tom Cruise went crazy. It also really launched Rebecca De Mornay, who doesn't get quite as much play as she used to in the movies these days, but she's still a really great actress, and she's quite good in Risky Business. But anyway, let's let's continue on, and let's talk about some of the other positive aspects of this episode. Anyway, we get to see our big fight between Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus this episode, and I did think they handled Dr. Octopus getting slapped with the whole Doc Ock name pretty well. Of course, if I remember correctly, in the comics it was Spider-Man defeated him, and once word got out that there was a guy with the name of Otto Octavius roaming around New York City, waving with 4 giant mechanical arms, of course the media being the media, and by the media I of course mean the Daily Bugle, slapped him with the Dr. Octopus label. Now, I could be wrong on that one, but as Adrian Monk said, I don't think so. But anyway, so I did like that introduction. And one thing that they did keep in tune with the comic books is that while Spider-Man does have a very long tradition of driving his enemies crazy with his jokes and his insults and his just irreverent attitude towards the danger he's facing, it is, at least from my point of view, pretty well established in the comics that one of the villains this gets to more than anybody is Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock is a guy who has an extraordinarily high opinion of himself, and Peter just throwing that mockery at him constantly just seems to really, really get under Doc Ock's skin more than just about any other Spider-Man villain that I can think of. And we definitely do get to see that come out very well here. Dr. Octopus, of course, played by the one and only Tom Kenny, who, of course, is best known as, of all people, SpongeBob SquarePants. But yeah, I really have to enjoy seeing this darker side of Kenny. We also, of course, got to see that as Zelius Zox on the Green Lantern show. But I think he's really, really having a lot of fun playing Dr. Octopus here. This is, of course, Dr. Octopus's really big episode, and Kenny just absolutely brings it. He really is, to me, the star of this episode. Another thing that I saw in this episode is another final Spider-Man tradition, and that of Spider-Man correcting villains or whoever it is he's fighting whenever they happen to refer to him as a bug or an insect by pointing out that spiders are in fact neither. They are arachnids, and as I understand it, that has to do with the number of legs that spiders have as opposed to the number of other legs that other insects have. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think so. Who'd have thought that junior high school science class would occasionally come in handy later in life, huh? But anyway, let me see here. Honestly, yeah, I think that does cover the majority of the positive aspects of this episode. And before I continue on, forgive me, folks, if I do make this one a little bit of short. If you watched my review of the Amazing Spider-Man movie from a few days ago, you might have noticed that my voice was kind of giving me some fits while I was doing that review. And if you've been following me on Twitter, I've been letting you guys know that I have indeed been having some problems with my voice the last few days. I think I'm over it, but I'm trying not to push it because I work in a school. I spend literally half my day talking, so I definitely don't want my voice to blow out on me. So this review might be a little shorter than what I've been doing recently. But anyway, oh yeah, let's talk about before I get into the negative aspects. I do want to talk about one. I don't know, not exactly positive or negative. It's just an observation. The villain that we see at the very beginning, Whirlwind, another very classic Marvel villain. He's been around the Marvel Universe since the early 60s, if I remember correctly. Ooh. Ooh, that was a heck of a kink. I wonder if the microphone picked that up. Well, I guess I'll find out. Anyway, here he is wearing his classic Silver Age 1960s outfit. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that several years ago, I believe it was like the late 90s or around 2000, somewhere in that neighborhood, an artist by the name of George Perez created an updated version of Whirlwind's costume that I thought was really a huge improvement. Now, if the name George Perez is unfamiliar to you or vaguely familiar, let me tell you first and foremost, out of everybody in comics, my favorite artist is George Perez. I love the guy. He is phenomenal. And he is, I guess, to most people, probably best known as essentially the co-creator of a lot of very popular DC characters like Raven and Starfire and folks like that. Basically, he and Marv Wolfman created the the 80s version of the Teen Titans, and that was the one that was, of course, the big influence on the Teen Titans show from several years ago. And of course, he's also done a lot of stuff. He's actually he did some really great work on Avengers, as I just said. He's of course done, you know what, I'm not even going to list it. His list of credits is just absolutely fantastic. Nobody does humongous crowd scenes with dozens and dozens of characters in comics quite as well as George Perez, with, of course, Phil Jimenez coming in a very close second. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent there, but I just wanted to bring that up. So here, oh yeah, let's okay, let me try and speak slowly and calmly so I can make my points clearly. All right, so now it's time to get into the negative aspects of this episode. Negative aspects number one, I still hate the spider cycle. Spider-Man tearing around New York City on a motorcycle is just ridiculous. All right? I don't know why the show has latched onto this so hard. The only thing I can think of is they think it's a cool accessory for selling Spider-Man action figures. Whatever. I don't like it. I want the spider cycle gone. But anyway, here, the big thing I have, of course, the problem with this episode is the whole thing that Peter brings up in regards to S.H.I.E.L.D. and his privacy. Now, of course, Peter was dumb in not paying attention to what he was doing when he was signing a whole bunch of paperwork involving a secret government agency. That would strike me as something that you would want to devote your full attention to. And just the fact that they sort of hand-wave this all away as, oh, Peter was distracted by wanting a jetpack. Well, okay, I suppose that's in keeping with this version of Peter, but I don't know. With as many good writers as the folks at Man of Action have, I think they could come up with something better than this. But anyway, let's look at what's happened here. Now, as we learn later on in the episode, all of the Amazing Friends also sign this agreement, which allows S.H.I.E.L.D. to monitor them. Okay, now this is in keeping with some stuff that we did see in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, and it does make sense that S.H.I.E.L.D. would want to keep an eye on these guys so that they could be there to help them out in case their secret identities are compromised and their family and other loved ones are put in danger. So on that level, this is perfectly reasonable. But let's get into my problems with this. And this is the part where I bring a possibly ridiculous level of over-analysis to a children's cartoon show. But hey, folks, that's what you and I are here for, right? Anyway, first of all, the law of the United States of America says that minors cannot sign legally binding contracts without parental consent. It's how child actors work. If kid actors want to work, their parents have to sign off on their employment contracts. So here we have minors not only signing legally binding contracts, we're also signing contracts that allow the Shield, an agency of the government, and actually an international agency, depending on how true to the comics this version of Shield is, but eventually giving these guys the right to to covertly record not only them, but presumably everyone else in their household, which would include other members of their family. Okay, so as I said, they're minors. They legally do not have the right to do that. Now, again, you can probably sort of hand wave at this as S.H.I.E.L.D. is a covert agency, and the normal law does not apply to them. Well, okay, I can't say that you're wrong on that. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a lawyer, and I'm certainly not going to be able to pretend to know what is legal and illegal in terms of a fictional spy agency in a superhero universe. But as I do in these reviews, I am bringing these things to your attention because they are things that came into my mind while I was watching this. Now, let's continue down this road. Maybe I'm thinking about this too much, but I'm kind of bothered just by the fact that, okay, apparently, like White Tiger and Iron Fist Lucas, apparently also gave S.H.I.E.L.D. the right to spy on their parents, and if they have, actually no, it is established in the comics, if I remember correctly, that Ava does have a brother. So now S.H.I.E.L.D. has the legal authority to not only observe Spider-Man and the Amazing Friends, but also the members of their family. And as we see from the episode, this includes recording, at the very least, Peter while he's in the bathtub. Now, should the Amazing Friends not be a little bit disturbed that S.H.I.E.L.D. is, in all likelihood, to put it bluntly, recording their moms taking showers? And as we said, we just did see that S.H.I.E.L.D. is apparently not above taping Peter when he's in the bathtub. I really hope that for her own sake, Ava negotiated with Nick Fury that when she grabs her morning shower, that only female agents are allowed to be on monitor duty. I'm assuming that there is somebody watching these cameras, and of course, given the sophistication of modern surveillance technology, and if you were to up that up to what probably would exist in a superhero universe, it might all just be part of some kind of computer program, and that there is in fact no one actually watching this. Well, okay, that makes it a little bit more palatable. I would be extraordinarily disturbed if somehow, Ava taking a shower in the morning was the highlight of a bunch of male S.H.I.E.L.D. agents' day. Never mind the fact that recording minors while they are taking showers, I guess I should say recording adolescents while they're showering and bathing is also illegal. Now, I don't want to go too far down that particular road, because if I do, I feel like some people might construe that as me making fun of the very serious issue of adults exploiting children in that kind of fashion, which of course is not my intent. All right, I work with kids. Just the thought of that, all right. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to leave it right there. As I said, I am going to bring that matter to your attention because it occurred to me while I was watching this episode. And again, given the gravity of that particular line of thought, out of respect, I am going to go no further than that. So anyway, but yeah, Peter does have a right to be upset here. I mean, he wasn't paying attention when he signed the contract, but he does have a right to be upset if S.H.I.E.L.D. is watching, Aunt May do whatever, basically take a shower or do whatever. Now, if the show is a little bit more grounded in the real world, in the superhero world, I think people would be more freaking out, wondering whether or not S.H.I.E.L.D. agents had been watching him touch himself shall we say. I'm trying to be as tasteful about that as I can, but it's something that teenagers, especially teenage boys, have been known to do. But anyway, at the end of the day, Peter does realize why Shield keeping an eye on him is important, and I do like that shows maturity enough to offer Nick Fury a compromise. Learning how to negotiate and compromise with other people is, of course, a vital part of being an adult. And I do like that Fury offers agrees to what are genuinely very reasonable terms. Of course, then he rounds up the amazing friends and shows them a collection of extraordinarily embarrassing footage of Peter, thus horribly violating Peter's privacy and trust that Peter has just placed him with him. And again, assuming that there was a computer program or something like that actually handling the recording, and that until then nobody had seen that. Yeah, Nick Fury has gone out of his way to undermine Peter's authority as team leader of the Amazing Friends. You know, one of the main reasons he brought him into S.H.I.E.L.D. to serve as team leader, to mentor Iron Fist and Power Man and White Tiger and Nova, turn them into better heroes. So yeah, if he wants that, they are going to need to be able to respect Spider-Man. And here he goes and shoots it all to hell. Of course, as we have seen over the last dozen or so episodes, the Amazing Friends' ability to respect Peter, and even worse, to actually learn lessons from what happens when they are around him, is, okay, the respect thing, I will admit, has been going up at a fairly steady and reasonable pace, so I will give the show credit for that. On the other hand, as I have complained about in previous videos, the Amazing Friends just never freaking seem to learn anything from their encounters. So yeah, Nick Fury, undermining the authority and respect of the man he asked to be team leader and mentor to the Amazing Friends because Peter was slightly rude to him. Because a teenager was slightly rude to an adult. Wow, Nick, are you sure your last name isn't Petty? Incidentally, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are a fantastic and very talented band, of which I am also a big fan. So anyway, I guess I should take a moment to comment about the relationship between Norman Osborn and Dr. Octopus, but honestly, I thought that was another really weak aspect of this episode. These guys just seem like... Have you ever seen video of two male goats fighting each other? Mountain goats fighting over females or turf or whatever. This is exactly what it seems like between Norman and Doc Ock. And my problem with this mainly is Norman, as much of a pain as Doc Ock is, exactly how many other extraordinarily brilliant scientists who are going to completely turn a blind eye to all this insanely illegal stuff that you do are you going to be able to round up? Now, granted, there are a multitude of evil, mad scientists roaming around the Marvel Universe, but I don't know. I think Norman's just being a dick unnecessarily. I mean, it's not exactly as if Norman has a really great track record of handling this whole, get Spider-Man's genetic information and turn it into a weapon, because he didn't even notice his own son was Venom when he was standing right in front of him. Basically, even trying to tell him, "Dad, I'm possessed by a crazed alien symbiont. Could you help me out here?" Yeah. So there we have it, folks. Overall, while there are some aspects of this episode that are strong, the continuation of many of the traditions of the Spider-Man comics, The fight between Peter and Dr. Octopus in the underground base. Again, very, very well done action, very classic sort of Spider-Man versus Doc Ock fight. And, of course, Tom Kenny's really great performance as Dr. Octopus. But all of that just doesn't make up for the real storytelling weaknesses that plague the rest of this episode. So again, I really can't give this episode anything more than, at absolute best, slightly above average. And there you have it, folks. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.